Thank you so much for tuning in. I am April Evans, and I have the opportunity to be talking with Representative Wendell Jones of District 25. This is our first of many monthly check ins where you will have the opportunity to listen to Wendell Jones as I ask him several questions about what's happening in the South Carolina House of Representatives so that you can be educated, so that he can educate you, the constituents of District 25, the community, as well as the upstate of South Carolina. So I want to take a moment to dive right in,
Okay.
Representative Jones. And if you don't mind, can you refresh our memory about District 25? So where does your representation end and begin? If you could just give us kind of a visual of that.
Oh, I'm honored to have a fairly large district and still minority majority district. The demographics are shifting, but it's great to have that type of representation. We are covering a great portion of Whitehorse Road, a good portion of Pleasantburg Drive, touches on Augusta Road a little bit, and then works its way south down toward the Woodmont area.
Okay, fantastic.
Little bits and pieces of Simpsonville since they did the redrawing of the district.
So I want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your win into the House.
Thank you.
I do want to ask, when did the legislative session begin?
It started the second Tuesday in January of this year.
Okay. And how long are you in session throughout the week?
We are there Tuesday through Thursday. Normally have maybe some committee meetings Tuesday morning. Normally session starts at noon on Tuesday, picks back up at 10 o'clock the next day. And depending on the topics that we're discussing, depending on how controversial they are, we stayed a long time Wednesday because we were dealing with a controversial this past Wednesday, dealing with a controversial topic. And so we will stay till we get the work done and then normally head out Thursday afternoon.
Well, one thing that I want to take this opportunity to commend you on is refreshing the community, getting us back engaged in politics, because politics can be so negative that we choose to stay out of it.
Yeah.
We choose to believe that it doesn't impact us just because of the negativity that's surrounded around politics itself.
Yeah.
So because there normally is so much negativity that's flowing out of politics, what are some of the good things that you've learned or experienced at the State House?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm smiling because I've absolutely fallen in love with the staff. We have the best staff in the world. No, the staff really makes sure all of this stuff goes well, whether it be from the janitorial staff to the security to the admins. Nobody knows where the bodies are buried better than the staff. And they really know how to educate you and tell you how stuff really works. And so I've been building great relationships with them along with the legislators, but the staff at the State House do an incredible job of keeping things going. Now, in terms of the legislator, there's a lot of sound bites. And, once the cameras are on, people make sure that they represent their base and in some cases say some extreme things and some divisive things. But people are people. And there are far more decent people who really want to do the right thing. People are very, what's the word, April? Sensible one-on-one.
Okay.
One-on-one. Had a lot of one-on-one. I've done a lot of that because I know as a freshman, I have to focus quite a bit on relationship building. And so I have a lot of one-on-one conversation with Democrats as well as with Republicans. And they are very sensible one-on-one. Unfortunately, sometimes when you go back to your caucus or go back to your party, that mob mentality kicks in again. And so in many cases, they'll go along because they feel like they need to go along, even though they have some objections. And so hopefully we'll continue to have one-on-ones and capitalize more on that sensibility and maybe do something that's more equitable for the people of South Carolina.
Well, Representative Jones, you set me up right nicely for this next question. And thinking about the good that is coming out of the State House.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main things that you ran on in your campaign was about balance.
Yeah.
And you just said the word equitable.
Yeah.
Right. So that makes me think of balance too. So now that you're in the State House and it is run, it's a Republican run state house.
Big time.
It is predominantly Republican, is what I'm saying.
Super majority.
Super majority. So as being a part of the Democratic Party, how do you suppose to bring balance? How do you suppose you will bring balance to this structure that is already predominantly Republican? How do you plan to make that happen since that was a part of your campaign?
Another good question. The balance, normally when people think about balance, they immediately run to numbers. And the numbers are this, folks in the House. We got 88 Republicans and 36 Democrats. In November, we lost 8 seats. And so that's how the Republicans have now a super majority. To have a majority vote in the House, you got to have 63 votes. We got 36 Democrats. So balance, that tells you right off the bat that balance is hard to achieve. But what it does, it drives you back to the fundamentals. And the fundamentals in society at large boils down to your ability to build relationship. You have to be able to build relationship. So I've been fixated on that in my month there, just getting to know people, stopping by their offices, definitely talking with people across the aisle. We have to, because for us to get anything passed, I could have 100% of the Democrats, and I still need 27 Republicans to sign off on it too. And so you got to have people's ear. They got to see you as reasonable. And so what I've been working on is that we can't just kick the door in because we got numbers. The Republicans can, and they remind you that they can sometime, and they proved it this week with some legislation, Bill 3728. We had 100% of the Democrats that opposed it, 100%. And still it flew through because they had the majority. But what I'm working on now is finding common ground where I can pitch some stuff. And I've got an idea of how to do this because I'm working on something right now that's kind of hard for them to refuse and continue to build relationships. So they'll sign off on some stuff, some legislation too, so that when it goes across the speaker's desk, it doesn't look, doesn't just look, but it is bipartisan, but it absolutely helps my district and even my community. So relationship.
Okay, so you gave us a little tickler about House Bill 3728, but we're gonna put a pin in it.
Okay.
We're gonna put a pin in it. But you were talking about relationships, so I have to ask, what is the most eye-opening revelation that you've learned in your short time in being in the State House?
Well, I guess it goes back to the openness to relationship. Of course, people are people, and I showed up with the D behind my name, Democrat, and so there's this apprehension. But I've been able to begin relationships with probably some of our more controversial figures down there, and some of them that thrive off of being controversial. And I've learned not to. Well, the campaign taught me, don't take too much personally. But once you get past the persona and you get to the person, it's not that hard to find some common ground. And once you find some common ground, just in the human experience of life, some common ground, our love of our kids, that we both love the state, that we both want to find ways to help people. It's amazing how you can begin to get people to question their perspective. That has been surprising because I really thought I was going to run into some people. For example, I've had some wonderful conversations with members of the Freedom Caucus, and everybody view them as like staunch in their stances. And when they're in front of camera, they sound very staunch in their stances. But I've been amazed at how open they are to wanting to hear some things and finding some common ground. Their big issue is about transparency right now. And it is for us too. We want everything out on the table. Let's just tell the truth. And so once you learn how to find that common ground, you'll be surprised at the level of support that you'll have, and just somebody's willingness to go eat some lunch with you or have dinner with you to talk about it. Um, that part has been true. So the I went down there thinking that there's going to be this huge chasm between Republicans and the Democrats, and I've noticed in just this first month, you can bridge that gap. You just got to approach them individually.
Okay, so let's go back to the tickler that you spoke of, House Bill 3728.
Yes.
So I follow you on many different platforms on social media. You have your personal page, you have the Elect Wendell Jones page as well, that's on Facebook. And I was reading your post about House Bill 3728. I think it's called the School Censorship Bill.
The title is much longer than that, but to summarize it, it's a censorship bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that pen that we placed on that earlier, we're just gonna go ahead and pull that pen out.
Okay.
Let's talk about this bill.
Okay.
Tell us, you said it was controversial, so please explain to us what that means. Inform us, educate us.
Okay. Well, this bill seems to be following suit with so many other bills. Florida and Texas they've been taking the lead in terms of trying to censor some of the stuff that's taught in schools. Kind of a backhanded way of this whole push about CRT, critical race theory. You pull this bill, you won't see critical race theory, the wording in there. Initially, it had language, very subjective language, like a child feeling uncomfortable. They removed that. But what it does, it carves a path to do what we see taking place across the nation, to begin to ban more books that speak to different people groups, Black Americans, Native Americans, people of color. But what makes it so even more untimely, because the intent behind the bill is bad enough, as I just described. But what makes it so untimely for our state is that South Carolina hangs out at the bottom of educational rankings in our public school system. But we also are having a hard time not only recruiting teachers, but retaining teachers. You know, in the last 2 years, 2 years ago, we was over 700 teachers short, which is huge. But 2 years later, we're closing in on 1,500 teacher shortage. People don't want to teach anymore. That's driven by us being on the lower end of the pay scale. The national average is about $65,000. We're at about 42. The governor's proposing 45, soon to bump up by 2026. I think he says 50. But when you think about that, April, picture a young lady graduating South Carolina State, wanting to be a teacher. She's offered $45,000 to come teach in Greenville, when the median income for Greenville is anywhere from $65,000 to $80,000. Imagine her making $45,000 and trying to afford rent. You know, when your rent should be 30% of what you earn. When rent in Greenville is averaging $1,300, $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 a month, how is she going to afford to live? And so we got those issues that we need to tackle. But now you're going to have teachers walking on eggshells, because the way this is set up, that if they say something that's offensive or deemed to be offensive, parents, well, here's the kicker. It's not even just the parents of the enrolled kids that can file complaints. It's a wide open thing that anybody can file a complaint on a teacher. Every district is being asked to put on their page a vehicle through which somebody can file a complaint on the teacher. Now, just imagine that when it's beyond parents, because right now it's already set up where if a parent is bothered by something that was taught, there's already a process in place for that parent to deal with it. But now we're going to codify it and make it a law, but it actually extends it beyond parents. Then anybody can file a complaint. Anybody can hear if you're teaching something. Anybody hears that you said something, they can file a complaint on you. So imagine the groups of people, the people who are pushing political agendas, the people who are purposely attacking our public education system. Now we're handing them a vehicle through which they can basically terrorize our teachers. And so I can only imagine a young 20-something, 30-something walking on eggshells trying to teach our kids because they're afraid that anything they say can be deemed as offensive. And now they have a complaint file. And I'm not so sure we'll be able to hide that from the public. And when I say hide, I'm not trying to avoid transparency, but if somebody is deemed guilty of something, you still should be afforded a level of privacy till it's proven, you know? But right now, it may be released to the public if you're just accused. And so to me, that can elevate into some pretty scary stuff for some of our teachers. And so we need to deal with that. And we're just not in a position to make life harder for our teachers. And we need to make life more attractive in South Carolina so we can have a quality education for our kids. And so it feels like we're absolutely undermining public education even more. And not to mention the voucher bill that's going to be coming down later. So it really feels like public education is under attack. And the majority of our citizens in South Carolina depend on public education. And that's scary to me because not to sound cliche, but I realize that if you control what a person learns, you control what a person earns. Mm-hmm. And so I'm concerned about the future for our children and their ability to live in an environment where the price of living continues to climb. I know that's a long answer, but it's just absolutely untimely to make this an issue right now. We got other things we really ought to be focusing on to strengthen our public education system.
Well, I don't want to consider that a long answer. I would say it was an informed answer. And you mentioned about the school voucher bill. With public education being under attack, meaning the school censorship bill, where, you know, if there's something that's being taught in my student's class or just in the school and I don't like it, it could possibly be censored or X'd out from the curriculum, which has a lot to do with, like you said, people of color and our heritage and our culture. And mm-hmm. being that we are a fabric of America, you know, it feels as though we are not being represented in the school system as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about this school voucher bill that you just highlighted. Give us a little bit of details on that.
Well, it's making its appearance soon. It's coming back on deck. The crux of this bill is that they will be signing dollars, state dollars, to children, not so much to the institution. And so parents will be allowed to pull their kids out of public education, send them to private schools, and those state dollars will follow that child, leaving the public education system, a system that's already underfunded. And so we're coming up with a vehicle to take more dollars out of it. So now you got teachers that are scared to teach, schools that are underfunded, and a segment of our society will be able to move their kids. And I state a segment of our society because there's a picture this, and I don't have the actual number in front of me, mm-hmm. but you can imagine how many families depend on school buses to get their kids to school, right? So that already states that they don't have the convenience or the ability to take their kids to school or take their kids across town to a private school or to a neighboring county to a private school. They depend on the system that's already set up to get their kid from home to school and back. This bill will push choice. You got choice, you got choice. That's not a choice for everybody. Some people are dependent upon the school in their neighborhood. They are dependent upon it. And dependent upon the school, the busing system to get them to those schools. They're at work by 7 o'clock. They're working second shift, third shift. They expect the traditional system to be able to get their kid to and from their neighborhood school and get them educated. They don't have the ability or the means to take their kid across town and take advantage of choice. And so that's going to cripple our kids because, again, I'm anticipating a further exodus of teachers. Teachers might go over to the charter schools. It's just going to further weaken our educational system, which is very short-sighted because we're not going to be able to build an educated workforce for the future. It's going to make us hard to compete with other states, it's going to make it hard to compete on this global level. And we are having to compete on all of those fronts right now.
So that I'm feeling very passionate about what you just said, because in my mind, I'm already thinking for Greenville County, our schools are funded by, to me, a sliding tax base anyway.
Yeah.
I know that if you're a homeowner and you pay your taxes, you get to see how your taxes are distributed, how they're itemized. And it shows schools, Greenville County schools. And based on where you live, those tax dollars go to the school in your area, correct?
Correct.
So what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, that now we're already on a sliding tax base anyway. You're saying that the tax dollars that belong to that school in that area, if my child decides, if I'm able to send my child to another school in a different area outside of my area, District 25, that money leaves with my child.
As a voucher.
Go. And so my school becomes increasingly underfunded.
Yeah.
So those who are left at this school have less resources.
Absolutely.
So educate me here and educate all of us. How can we stay informed about where these bills are in the process? How can we stay engaged to know what's happening with these bills? House Bill 3728 and the school voucher bill. Help us to know how we can stay informed.
But first of all, I'm placing responsibility on myself to make sure that we're communicating by forums like this. We'll be doing some town hall meetings out in the community soon as well. But I'm trying my best to make sure we get that information on my social media pages as well. And so folks have to be plugged in. One of the things that we've got to do in our community is make sure that we don't get engaged just in election cycles. The election cycle is important because we vote and put people in office, but we put them in office to create policy. Policy is generated all the time. The South Carolina website, the House website, is packed with information. It actually tracks the bill from committee on through. So you can type in a bill number, you can type in the wording of a bill and pull that bill up, and you can literally see where that bill is. Because most people don't understand how this really works. As a matter of fact, if you don't mind, I want to make sure people understand how this really works. So let's take a couple minutes to talk about that. Only elected officials can propose bills. That's why you run. An average citizen can't propose a bill. They can propose an idea to a legislator, but the legislator still has to run with the bill. The legislator has to do tremendous amount of research. For the stuff I'm working on now, I'm doing tremendous amount of research just to make sure, get the language right, make sure you find out if somebody else is doing it in the country, how they did it, find out if it was pitched before within our state and just didn't survive and why. You got to find that kind of stuff out. Work very closely with our legal counsel. We got a team of attorneys that take your idea and put it in bill format. Not only that, before you present the bill or put it across the desk, as it's called, and I'll explain what that means in just a second, you really need to work on building a coalition. You got to go back to those relationships that you've been building and say, listen, here's something that I'm thinking about doing. How do you feel about being a co-sponsor with me? Because you got to get some people's names on there who already have influence within their parties. So you can't just take it and throw it up there. And people do that. They just come up with a bill, throw it across the desk. You can go back to your constituents and say, I tried. Or look at the bills I tried. But that's not a true effort to get a bill passed. So you got to try to build a coalition behind you before you present it to the desk. The desk is the area where the speaker sits along with several staff members. You present that bill to the desk. The reader of our party, Bubba's a great guy. He reads it for the first reading to make sure everybody understands what bill is being proposed and who's proposing it. Then the speaker assigns that bill to a committee for further investigation on the bill. Majority of bills die in committee. Once it's assigned to a committee, that committee gets the right to decide if it's relevant. That committee gets the right to start attaching amendments to it. And if it survives, it's going to come out looking a little different than you proposed. And so it comes back out. Say it survives, it comes back out for a second reading. In the second reading, you get to discuss it on the floor. And so you present your bill to your fellow colleagues, and we can go back and forth. Amendments are proposed there, so your bill can change even more, and then it's presented for a vote for everybody on the floor. If it passes that, gets a majority vote, then it goes across the hall to the Senate. The Senate can kill it there. The Senate takes it through the same process we just took it through, where it's assigned to a committee over there. They can make amendments or decide this isn't worth seeing the light of day, and they'll let it die over there. So a lot of your hard work, after you put all that work in, your bill may die in somebody's committee. And so people need to understand that. If it comes out of the Senate, it comes back to the House, so the House can see what the Senate did to it, see if they agree with it. If the House has a problem with the changes that the Senate made, a special committee is formed with members of the House and the Senate, and they get together to see if they can come to an agreement. If it's finally agreed upon, both chambers, the House and the Senate, agree, then it goes to the governor. If he doesn't like it, he gets to veto it at the last minute. His veto can be overturned by a 2/3 vote of the House, of the chamber, legislature, General Assembly. But if he vetoes, it's probably going to be a hard thing to get 2/3 of the people to say they're going to go against the governor, especially when he's a Republican governor, and both chambers are majority us Republicans. That's how difficult it is and how much time it takes to get a bill passed. And sometimes they'll let it sit somewhere. If they don't like it, they may not come publicly out and kill it. They just let the time go. They let the clock expire. And then you have to try to represent it again. That's what happened with the hate crime bill. The Senate held it up. The clock expired. So they had to pre-file it again this year. So now it's got to come back up again. And so it's a lot of wrangling that goes on. But if you're going to be a good legislator, there's a lot of work you got to do to try to make sure your bill survives all of those stages.
So it goes back to what I believe you said in the beginning. One, you just said the word coalition, and that reminded me of what you said earlier about relationship building.
Absolutely.
Building those individual relationships so that you can have a coalition to support it.
Yeah, you're not going to force anybody's hand. You're not going to go down there. You can go down there and raise all kind of sand you want. You can have as many press conferences as you want to. You're no longer going to shame anybody into signing the bill. You're not. You're just not. Matter of fact, the way that it works now, you raise a big enough stink and try to shame the Republican Party, they'll just go raise money. They'll hijack your message. They'll call you woke or whatever they want to do nowadays, and they'll go raise a ton of money to further campaign against your bill and also campaign against you. You're going to have to be a person who can unify people to be successful, especially when you're in the minority now and trying to get legislation passed. And that's something that I'm focused on in terms of building those relationships and proving that I'm being listened to, proving that the bills that I'm proposing, yes, blesses my community, yes, blesses my district, but it crosses over socioeconomic lines. It blesses is something that's needed for the state. And you have to have a formidable campaign. You better know your stuff. You better do your homework. You better have your data. If you're trying to do this through emotional appeal, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. You've got to be able to present your case intelligently and remain logical even when they throw those emotional bombs at you to see if they can get you unnerved.
Okay, so for those of you that are just tuning in, I am April Evans, and I am sitting with Representative Jones of District 25, and we are taking an opportunity to uphold his commitment to educate the constituents and the community about what's happening in the State House. And this is his monthly check-in, so we want to give you an opportunity to listen in and engage and hopefully take away some items that you can use, information that you can use throughout your day-to-day. To stay informed about what's happening and things that we can do within our district to help support him and his efforts in the State House. So, Representative Jones, I know that it's very early in the session. Remember, you just told me that you guys started the second Tuesday of January. And I know that most freshmen, as you are told to sit and learn during your first session. Don't do too much, just sit and learn.
Yeah.
So, but what are you working on anything that you might need support from where you might need support from voters?
I am, and I'll give y'all snippets. I'm not trying to be evasive, but you kind of got to protect the baby when it's in the womb, because if you put too much out too soon, it can get attacked. But there is one bill that I'm getting some traction on right now that I'm willing to talk about, because I've been talking about it a lot, related to small businesses. I ran on economic mobility, because economic mobility, April, means the ability to increase the amount of monies that you can earn yourself. Your kids make more, your next generation makes more, because statistics say that normally what economic level you're born into is the economic level you die in. We can't live like that. The cost of living is steadily increasing, so our earning ability has to steadily increase, and our children have to be able to make more money. You know, we see the cost of living in Greenville. You cannot make what you made 10 years ago and be comfortable in Greenville. You have to. There has to be mobility in what you can earn. We got to remove barriers and provide incentives for those in our communities to give us opportunities. So I'm focusing, that first bill is focusing on small business, which includes minority businesses, and our ability to convince larger companies to give bigger contracts and longer term contracts. So much so that the small business, the minority owned business, has to hire people to fulfill the contract. You got to give them enough business that they have to hire people full time. That's how you change a neighborhood. That's how you change a community, because most of our businesses hire from our communities. And so we're trying to create tax incentives to do that. And I've gotten some really good feedback on that bill. There's some other things I'm focusing on, especially dealing with what's happening in the rental market. You know, our state is very developer, very rent property owner friendly, and given the cost of living here and the escalation in rental prices is creating a lot of problems that aren't being addressed in terms of application fees, overall affordability. The county has done some good stuff in Greenville, trying to figure out what we can do from a state standpoint. I'm supporting some of our brothers. One of our representatives down in Charleston, two in Charleston. One is pitching a tenants court supported by the state, which means you have a right to representation before somebody can evict you. So I've signed on to that bill, and I'm there to help them try to push that through. One of our senators is pushing inclusive zoning, which means that it'll be a state issue now, where developers have to include an affordable component to their development that's beneath the AMI, percentage of the AMI. So we're trying to inch our way to income-based housing and quit playing around with this affordable housing word, which is all over the place, but something that people can live affordably. So that's the places of my focus, places of my research, and places of my support for existing bills that are already in the docket. But I've got a couple of things, one in particular that I'm working on. I don't want to give too much detail about it right now, but if we can get it done, it's going to help a lot of people.
Representative Jones, I do want to thank you for taking time to uphold your commitment to keep your constituents and the community engaged in the work that you're doing in the State House. I know that I follow you on your social media platforms, but could you please refresh us on how we can stay connected to you?
Absolutely. Facebook page is Elect Wendell Jones. Please look it up. Please join it. Please invite your friends to join it. Even if you're not in the district, I think we'll give you some information that can help you, keep you educated, but also allow you to hold your elected officials accountable too. Also give you instructions on how to be further engaged outside of voting. Yes, we want you to vote. Everybody, please, please, please vote, because policy is going to come to your doorstep whether you vote or not. But you need to remain engaged in the political process, because, as I said to April earlier, policies are steadily being presented. You need to know what's out there so that you can help us defend your rights or expand your rights based on what policies are being presented. You have to be engaged, period. That we really have no time, guys, to check out, because a lot of the stuff feels dangerous, to be honest with you. Feels like we're going back in time with a lot of these bills, And we need you to know. We need you to know how it's going to affect your pocket. We want you to know how it's going to affect education. Want you to know how it's going to affect your ability to afford decent housing. The list goes on and on and on. It's affecting how you live. So you need to stay plugged in. And that falls on your shoulders. We're going to give you the information, but you have to take the initiative to make sure you stay plugged in.
Well, Representative Jones, we appreciate you honoring your commitment to keep us informed.
Thank you.
I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity to interview you, and I hope I wasn't too hard on you during our first session. I am looking forward to
Great questions. Great question.
Next month, we'll be meeting again to keep you all informed at our monthly at Pastor, he is a pastor, also Representative Jones, keeping you informed on what's happening in the State House. So we look forward to the monthly check-ins, and please be sure to share this to your page, to share the information about how to connect with Representative Jones as well. So
April, let me say this one thing before we go. Today, because of the limit of time, we may not have touched on every hot button. Politics is personal, so it's personal to you. We may not have touched on the thing that's at the top of your list. It's not intentional. We just don't have the time to deal with it all. Please reach out to us. And if you have questions, if you have some things that you think we need to focus on, let us know. Let us know what it is. My team and I are committed to doing that. But again, I realize we may not have touched on everything you had hoped I would touch on in this first interview. There will be ones in the future. There will be town hall meetings where we're coming out to the community centers to spend time with our folks, to talk to you directly. But let us know. Stay in touch with us. Let us know how you feel. But again, I do apologize if we didn't touch on the thing today that you were waiting to hear about.
Great. Everyone, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to seeing you again next month.
Thank you, guys.